Rays of sunlight peeked cheekily through the off-white blinds. They danced and ran across the room as their monarch rose higher in the sky. Eventually, the kingdom of the sun came to rest on a young girl. The rays came to rest on her head. It is here our story begins. The girl rose slightly. Her faded orange and pink hair fell on her face. Sleepily, she raised up her hand up and brushed it away. Yawning, she climbed out and walked over to the closet to put on her clothes and start her Monday monotonous routine. Paige! A deep, hoarse voice called from downstairs. Paige hurried to get the rest of her clothes on and rushed down the stairs. She walked through the open door. Paige, are you ready to go? He said. Yes, Dad, I'm ready to go see her, Paige solemnly replied. Her dad gazed down at her and nodded his head before telling her to get her breakfast. Almost robotically, Paige moved through the ground floor of her home, her moves slow and calculated. She got her breakfast. As she ate it, her mom came in, grabbing her keys. After she had finished, Paige and her family piled into the car. The cars and trees, much like her days, blurred into one. Paige let out a deep sigh and turned to look over at her brother. Danny turned to her, confusion painted on his face. Paige chuckled. Half an hour later, they arrived at the hospital. Slowly, they were led through the pure white halls, disinfecting and salting their noses. After a while, they entered a room. Nan, Paige breathed out. Her Nan lay there, barely breathing, looking up at Paige and her family. She weakly smiled. The pink-haired girl wanted to rush to her side, but she knew she couldn't. Her Nan looked up at her son and his family. I want you to know that I love you with all my heart, her Nan said with raspy breaths. I love you all. I know that whatever you all do in life, I will always be proud. And with that, Paige's Nan breathed her last. Her chest slowed and came to a stop. A smile stretched across her face. Paige's Nan looked at peace and serene. At least she had her family around her, Paige's dad thought. Paige and Danny looked over and screamed out Nan. Paige broke down, sobbing. She let out wails of pure sorrow. Danny latched on to his older sister, crying. This is where we leave the family, my dear reader. Of all the days Paige could have shared with us, she wanted to share this one. This is the one day, she said, that I would never forget. Paige never explained what happened to her family, what happened next in her story. She could not finish it, so we left it. What we do know is that she and her family are still recovering from the loss of her Nan.
There was a scientist called Anne. At the moment, they're in lockdown. They attempted to make a brand new formula that could make anyone fall asleep in an instant. Turns out they just remade chloroform. They started a hobby, but besides that, they actually quite enjoyed lockdown. It gave them more chances to avoid social interaction. They had a cat, a dog called Cat. Cat was a chocolate lab. She enjoyed actual cat's company. And also had a bird called Snowflake, a white parakeet. She had an entire aviary for Snowflake and had a lab for herself and a small room for Cat. Overall, she was quite happy. The end.
I stared out of the window, as I had done for countless days before. As I stared at the people walking their dogs, I felt my phone buzz. It was my boss, aka the Prince of Hell, aka Satan. I picked up the phone. Hello, I said, nervous of what I had done. Hi Lucy, how are you? I'm good. You? I replied. I'm fine. I just called to tell you that I'd been promoted to Earth status. Oh my god, thank you so much. I replied, my excitement spilling over. He hung up. I fell back onto the sofa. With my anxieties calmed, I carried on staring out the window and for the first time ever, someone waved back.
Jeff is the neighbourhood cat. He only has 3 out of his 9 lives left. The others are gone due to reckless driving or drink drivers or touchy toddlers. But this isn't about them. It's about how he went from 3 to 2. He was chilling on his fence, casually waiting for all the kids to get out of school, but all of a sudden he was roughly hit off the fence and knocked onto the road by a bunch of teenagers. They hated cats, obviously. So they beat him up and left him to get run over in the road and die. Then a tiny kid picked him up and took him home, and now Jeff is loved and he's never left that house.
This cat was small and scared, as he was far from home. He can hear his owner call his name, Owen, but he was too far away. He meowed loud for his owner to hear, but he didn't know if it worked. Sad and alone, he meowed once more. Footsteps came closer, and his owner came into view. Now he is safe and warm, but the fear is still there. He never wants to be alone again, so he will never try to leave his owner, because with him he is happy. Klaus was so done with staying at home, and all he wanted to do was see someone other than his family. He did notice that he and his sister became a lot closer, but I guess that's what happens when you have nothing else to do but play games. He broke his arm while being in lockdown because out of boredom he thought it would be fun to scare his sister, but he didn't expect her to push him down the stairs out of shock. She did say sorry, but he can't really blame her because he was the one to scare her. He can't wait for lockdown to be over so he can see his friends and be able to talk to them face to face, but he'll have to wait.
Once there was this guy. His name was Jake. He was in lockdown, like everyone else is at the moment. He decided to make a better bond with his family, but since he has no school, he decides to take his dog out on a walk every day and play fetch with him. The dog's name is Storm. He is a husky.
A friend in lockdown. I'm sorry, Paul, but I'm going to have to furlough you until further notice, said Mr. Corset, the hotel manager. To begin with, when Paul realised that he hadn't lost his job, but would still be getting paid 80% of his salary, he could just stay at home and watch TV. He felt lucky, but as lockdown went on, the novelty of staying up late every night and not having to wake up to catch the 6 a.m. bus wore off, and he found himself missing his workmates. He really missed the meals he used to get at the hotel, as he was now surviving on pot noodles, sliced bread and cider. One miserable Monday evening, Paul decided that he might as well go for his 1 hour of exercise and trudged down the stairs from his stuffy flat. The streets were eerily quiet as he turned towards the canal. As he walked under the low-arched bridge, something ran at him from the darkness, and he kicked out in panic. He heard a whimper and saw a small, shaggy black dog scuttle back into the shadows. Another dull week passed. Paul didn't know what day it was anymore. He felt lonely and miserable, and he had stopped bothering to clean his flat. His clothes were dirty as the laundrette had shut down weeks ago. One morning, Paul was woken by bright sunshine streaming through his window. Needing some fresh air, he found himself heading towards the canal again. After he had been walking for about half an hour, he realized that the black dog was following him. He walked further than he ever had before, but every time he looked over his shoulder, although he tried to lose it, the dog was always trotting a few meters behind him. As Paul neared his front door, the dog got closer. "Shoo!" he shouted. Paul. "Get lost," I'm not your owner. The next morning, Paul felt better than he had in weeks. He got up early, tidied the flat, had a bath, and made himself a bacon sandwich. He ran downstairs to put out the bin, only to find the black dog on his doorstep. He stooped down to ruffle its fur, and it looked up at him with sad eyes. "You must be hungry, Mutt," said Paul, smiling. He gave the bacon sandwich to the dog. The dog ate it gratefully and licked Paul's hand. Paul took the dog for another walk that morning, and by the afternoon the dog was snuggled up in his flat while Paul watched Netflix and shared his pizza. Every day, Paul and the dog walked together, and both were so happy to have found a friend in lockdown.